So, as I said, thank you everybody for joining us. And throughout this discussion today, there's going to be a few polls we'd love for you to get involved in. And I believe the first one now is up there on your screen. So if we could get everybody just to go through that now. But the first question is, which category do you think would have the biggest impact to scale climate action? Then we've got a few options there, which is carbon neutral transport, decarbonising the grid, tackling food, or cleaning up the industry. So if everybody would like to go through and drop a little vote on there, what you think at the moment, we'll give it a moment or two, and I'm sure the results will come through in a moment. Right, so that answer will swiftly come up in a moment. We'll get the feedback from there. So we can see, right, okay, so we've got decarbonising the grid and cleaning up the industry as the top two. And then we've got the carbon neutral transport as the first. All very good methods, I'm sure. But yeah, thanks for the feedback on that, guys. Now just to head into basically setting the agenda. So be prepared for a 1 hour panel discussion with a live Q&A throughout. And then we're going to head into half an hour of networking for those that wish to continue the conversation further, or like myself, enter a bit of a healthy debate. So please also note that this is being recorded, this session, and will be uploaded to our Soda Social YouTube channel, where you will be able to access our previous webinars as well. So we're going to also be formulating a podcast with the audio on our Soda Social Spotify channel. There are subtitles for those people that might need them. So please do check in the chat function on how to access this. Right, so let's get started. So good morning and afternoon, depending on where you are in the world, and welcome. I'm the host and chair today for the Soda Social webinar. So my name is George O'Connell, and I specialise in software engineering and mobile development recruitment. But on the side of that as well, I'm also the head of our social events at Trust in Soda, and head up all of the events for Soda Social, which is our networking community. So just wanted to kick things off, really drop us in at the deep end with a few sort of facts and figures. So climate tech really directly mitigates or removes emissions and helps us to adapt to the impacts of climate change, and enhances our understanding of the climate. So a fact I found, according to iCapital of 2021, the cost of an Impossible Burger at Burger King is only $1 to $2 more than the original burger. And with time, we expect the price to reach parity or fall below that of a traditional burger patty. So producing the Impossible Burger reportedly requires 96% less land and not 87% less fresh water, whilst generating 89% fewer greenhouse gas emissions, which of course enforces the power of taking action. So we've seen obviously a big movement with a lot more people becoming vegetarian and vegan, which ultimately is helping out the planet as well. And just another fact I wanted just to share is, so research conducted by UK Tech as of 2022 suggested that climate tech is actually the fastest growing vertical in Europe, with funding soaring tenfold from 840 million, and that is pounds, in 2017 compared to 8.4 billion pounds in 2021. So in the same period, climate tech was the second outright largest investment vertical behind fintech. And climate tech startups are starting to address the key factors of climate action, such as mobility and transport, energy, food, agriculture and land use, industry manufacturing, built environments, and financial services as well. So yeah, there's certainly a lot going on in the climate space, and I'm sure our lovely panel are going to tell you a little bit more about how their businesses are helping out that as well. So just one more thing before we sort of go into our panel and they introduce themselves. There is another poll coming up on your screen. So if you'd like to go through that and put in your answers, and then we'll share the results back in a moment. So the first one that we wanted to just share with you, should see on your screen, is, so rapid growth in climate technology is being driven by a combination of hard pressures. Now, which one do you foresee as being the biggest challenge? So ambitious decarbonisation goals, changing investor attitudes, or effective climate regulation. So if you'd like to input your answers there, and we'll get the results back in a short moment. So just while that's going on, we really want to make this as engaging as possible. So if you do have any questions for our panel throughout the webinar, feel free to ask them in the chat function, or you can ask directly to us in the networking event afterwards. Right, so let's get stuck in. So I think the first thing really we wanted just to sort of go into is to get everybody to introduce yourself, tell us about your role, your experience, and a little bit more about your businesses. So I'd like to pick out Lee first, if you'd like to give us a quick intro, Lee, please.
Yeah, thanks, George. Lee Brown. I'm one of the founding members at Helpful, and we are a purpose-driven fintech startup. My background, actually, maybe interestingly, is I'd spent 10 years in the Royal Air Force in what seems like a previous life now. Coming out of there, I worked in various different project roles, and then found myself working with Helpful just over a year ago. Originally joined to manage a couple of projects, and quickly found myself in charge of all the operations. So as I mentioned, Helpful is a purpose-driven fintech startup, and we're dedicated to changing the way people pay and get paid. And we're very proud to be working very closely with the circular economy, and in particular the deposit return scheme, which is due to be rolled out across the UK by 2024, which is a big initiative to promote and incentivize recycling of recyclable containers across the country.
Fantastic. Yeah, thank you very much, Lee. Brilliant to have you here. And if I'd like to then pass over to Anna, please.
Great to be here. Thank you, George. So I'm Anna from Mellybees Network. We are a non-profit organization based in Germany, but active in some of the most endangered areas of the Amazon. And yeah, I'm here to bring the Amazonian voice to the community, and I'm looking forward to further talk with you all.
Fantastic, and as always, thank you very much, Anna. Great to have you here. And yeah, I'd like to next then pass over to Lisa, please.
Hey everyone, I'm also happy to be here. My name is Lisa. I am one of the co-founders of RePath. RePath is developing the world's first software as a service climate adaptation management solution. That means that we are helping companies and understanding location-specific their physical climate risks, understanding them with a value at risk, with the specific vulnerabilities, and then ultimately, that's our product vision, having automated climate adaptation recommendations through our platform. We are a young startup, and you will hear a bit more about us. And maybe just quickly about myself, I have the role of the sales and organizational development at RePath. Previously, I was honored to lead or to head the international sales department of Deutsche Bahn. And now I'm from the big corporate world in the very exciting purpose-driven startup world.
Fantastic. Yeah, thank you very much, Lisa. And lastly but not least, go over to Thomas, please.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, George. Hello, also from my side. Happy to hear and to be here and share our experience we face on our endeavor with RePath. So I'm one of the co-founders at RePath and join Lisa today here. And I have a scientific background, so I'm a climate scientist by training, and I'm leading the product development and innovation at our company. And as Lisa introduced, it's very interesting to see this panelist here today, because we have a wide spread from more related climate mitigation, so decarbonization on the one side, and on the other side, we with RePath focusing on the adaptation part. So to those who are not familiar with those terms, with what happens and how do we overcome threats which are already under the way, even though we might be at zero emissions from tomorrow on. So happy to be here and to share also our views and thoughts.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Thomas. Great to have you here. And yeah, just for the sake of everybody that's tuned in, we thought it'd be great if Thomas, as a climate scientist, could give a little bit more insight about the data and some real sort of good detail behind what they've found and what climate tech really sort of means. So we've got some slides here prepared. And again, I'll pass over to Thomas for a few moments to take us through these slides.
Yeah, thank you. I will directly jump in. So maybe just to those who are interested in our startup, maybe it will be also a little bit phrased by RePath, but I hope and I'm optimistic that we have enough space for all the other companies being here as well. So so we are a nationally funded startup right now. So we got a grant which is running for 1 year by the national government of Germany and the European Union. And what is our main motivation? We will see on the next slide that so we face that the world is getting more and more complicated in terms of that we already face that extreme weather events or the threats through extreme weather events have increased since the last decade tremendously. And this is due because the climate crisis already manifests perceivably. And we are actually on a way to a sustainable growth and sustainable future, but this is at risk under future climate conditions. So today we are heading into, we call the biggest transformation of economy, because the economy also has to face and to tear down solutions, how to overcome those threats in their business models. And on the next slides, I collected a couple of key takeaways from the latest IPCC report. So the IPCC is a UN body, which is the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, a body of scientists, independent scientists, which gather together the latest state of the climate research in a condensed way, and they report on the state of the scientific basis every couple of years, so like 5 to 6 years, and the latest report just came out recently. And they are, yeah, once more, we have to say, very honest. So it is documented, well documented, that the climate hazards have worsened since the past decade significantly. So there is no doubt that we already are in a transition where we can feel the impact of a changing world already. Even though the human-induced warming right now has reached about 1.1 degree above pre-industrial levels, and the political goals, which are already discussed, are around 1.5 degree or 2 degree warming, which should not be reached. And if we continue or have continuous warming rates as we have in the current rates, this will be reached as early as 2040. So we are heading towards it. I don't want to mirror a black frame here, but I think it's obvious that we already face challenges and that we will face them even more frequently in the future. And with that, also the risk and the dangers will multiply when we fail even the climate action we try to implement already, especially the economic damage worldwide increases non-linearly. So it means that yeah, the impact might be even worse with every single degree warming more. And it has also been documented in the assessment report that there are adaptation options and goals on their way, but it's not enough. So to stay safe and to reach resilience in society, we have to do more. And we at RePath, we try to give a solution and to provide information so that economically is empowered to adapt and to do more. And on the next slide, I got some numbers about those, how the economy is already impacted and how it manifests already in economic loss. So extreme events and the frequency especially and the intensity of those extreme events like natural hazards, which have already increased in intensity and frequency in the last decade, have increased also in economic loss globally. So the disasters increased already from, in contrast to 1960 to 1999, by almost a factor of doubling in the last decade. And also the economic loss has increased even more than double. So we expect, or it is undoubtful that it is, that the trend will increase significantly even more. And there is every year the World Economic Forum combines a report about the global risks and for economy and what are actually the greatest risks. And since about 5 years, the greatest risks reported in that report are every year the same. And what it is climate action failure and the risk for extreme weather events. And I think I don't have to tell more that this is somehow high on the agenda at economy, but at the same time, economy is also not in a situation that they can overcome that on their own, but they need support in terms of proper climate information and how is their business model affected by climate changes and what they can do about it. So on the next slide, a brief summary why economy is at risk and why we should take care about it, and why sustainable growth also for the society, not only for economy, is threatened. So first of all, it sounds very cheesy, but the protection of human lives is at risk. We need to avoid disruptions of the supply chain when we would like to keep the economy as it is by now. We also need to protect critical infrastructure, which is affected. For example, we had a large flooding event last autumn in Germany, where the infrastructure was heavily interrupted and still is for those people living in that area which was flooded. On the other side, from now on, there is, sorry, there's a switch in the slide, so thanks. On the other side, there is more pressure put on economy in terms of regulations. So there's reportings put in place which increase obligations for companies to report on how their business model is threatened by climate change. So there is also a willingness, but also pressure for the companies to cope with that information. And it's important for them also to properly plan and to manage their business. And as mentioned before, it is important to notice that the businesses cannot solve this on their own, but they need proper information to overcome it. And we would like to support and empower companies to do so with our platform as a service solution, providing adaptation. So providing information on the risk, but also providing adaptation solutions to that risk for companies. And that's it so far. So
Fantastic. Yeah, I think you covered that last slide was covered with some previous points, but yeah, thank you very much, Thomas. It's interesting to know that, you know, even in the last decade, things have absolutely doubled, which again shows the importance for all three businesses that we have on this call as well. It's yeah, it's quite I think also as well, it's quite mad to think that, you know, the way that things are going, you know, we're heading more towards adaptation now as well, which is again is another interesting point, which I'm sure we're going to cover again. So I'd like to just jump into some questions, which I'll sort of fire out to the panel. And you know, the first one really I wanted to cover is, I know Thomas has covered part of it already, but you know, what would you say is the real difference between climate protection and climate adaptation? I'm happy to fire that out towards Thomas or Lisa.
Yeah, maybe I described it in other words. So what we know is, and we see that, and everyone knows that, is that climate protection has been in focus the last couple of years, and that's super important, no doubt. However, climate protection still remains incredibly important. But what we face currently, and what also this the quote that we saw is focusing on the next step. So if climate protection is here, we're looking at climate adaptation, and that really means everything. To sum up what Thomas has said, we need to now adapt to the unfortunately irreversible changes of the climate that are, or that is leading to the extreme events, also the gradual changes, and is challenging for the Earth. And so we need to continue to protect the climate, but we also need to open the eyes for adaptation, just to specify the different terms here. And that adaptation market is very new, and not really, I feel a lot of people obviously don't really fully grasp it yet, the difference and why and how and what does it actually mean. So it's for us important to make people, businesses, everyone understand why it's needed.
Yeah, and I think it's good to understand the two differences, because, you know, we've been talking about protecting the climate for so many years now, and it's finally getting to the point now where it's like, you know, we need to adapt to it, you know, because it's going to happen, it's going to keep happening. So no, yeah, it's an interesting, it's a sad topic, but it's an interesting topic to learn more about. And a question sort of leading, you know, that might actually be valid for all of the people on here, is, you know, there's a lot of businesses starting. I know a lot of you are sort of early stage startups and non-profits. How do you feel we could, you know, better support, you know, science-based startups and charities? I'm happy to open that to everybody.
I can jump in with my 10 pence. So I think firstly it starts with funding. I think these companies, these climate tech companies, need the money to be able to do the work in the first place, and then they need to be backed by the right government agencies to make sure that they're going in the right direction and that they're actually concentrating on the right areas. The guys at RePath, you know, doing a great job. That was a great couple of slides there, Thomas. You know, it's so important that these companies are there and they're making people aware of firstly the risks, and then, you know, what companies, what businesses can do to counteract that and make sure that they have processes and procedures in place to tackle it.
Totally agree. Maybe from our perspective, because we are currently in that phase, what I experience, or we experience, is that also there, the understanding of this new market is not fully there. So they tell us we need to be able to measure the impact, for example, and we cannot yet. So new measurements, new understanding, new techniques must be in place in order to actually be able to grasp it. And I feel mostly still in the climate protection field. And we've also got a lot of investors that or VCs that said no, because they focus on climate protection. And we were like, okay, but you know, also you need to move on. So this is, I guess, what should happen.
Yeah, and I bring my perspective of also acknowledging the traditional wisdom. So, and the need to partnership. So we also kind of work together with universities, both in Brazil and the UK, in Germany, but also with the perspective of acknowledging that there's a lot of wisdom that we need for the climate adaptation to succeed. We need to also kind of acknowledge the knowledge that's already there on the amount of species even that we are losing without even knowing that we are losing. So yeah, kind of bringing together these two perspectives. It's very important for us.
100%. Yeah, I do agree. And a question just sort of leading off of that, which is in a similar spectrum, is, you know, ultimately investment and scale are required to bring down the cost of climate technologies, so that when they become an economically viable prospect. Sorry. And so a question maybe I'll fire away to Lee is, you know, what were the biggest challenges when gaining investment in early stage innovation and, you know, brand new technologies?
I think Lisa kind of mentioned it there. It's sometimes when you're speaking to investors about something that's completely different and not maybe the popular topic or the trend, if you like, is difficult to get across to VCs, especially VCs, because they manage risk, they manage someone else's money. So you've got to really do some good convincing to try and get them on board. I think what we've certainly seen over the last few months is that VCs are, you know, they're turning a corner, and you have some really good ones who are super aware that investment is very much needed in these areas. Some you could argue maybe paying a little bit of lip service to it, and maybe they're doing it just to save face. Yeah, it's about convincing and possibly, as it becomes more heavily regulated, and I previously mentioned about, you know, government agencies stepping in as well. So what tends to happen is when topics are enforced by a government or by an agency, then that's when the tide really shifts, unfortunately.
Definitely. Go for it, Thomas. Yes, we want to say the same.
Yeah, I totally agree in that sense. So I think Lisa mentioned it at the beginning, so that this topic of decarbonization is already very much in place, and this is also, or it has reached that state because there were regulations. And I think when we talk about climate adaptation, at least for our business model, it's the same way. And we had a very interesting comment this morning from a VC who said, well, you know, I totally believe in your solution, but imagine that companies, they are not, they are kind of flexible, but they are not innovative so far that they really think, yeah, we should go that way, until it is somehow regulated or needed. And the fun fact then was that he even said, you know, what does it actually mean if it would be regulated, but the cost is too low? So what does and this very much touched me, because in the end it is our business model, which ideally makes sense. But in the end, if it's not regulated even properly, then the regulations fail as well. So this was an interesting learning this morning. And yeah, maybe this was what I would like to tell as well.
For sure. And I think something that I've certainly been learning since we've sort of organized this webinar is learning, fact finding, and understanding, you know, the landscape of it all. And just a little bit question off the cuff here is, if I could go around to each of you, and, you know, what has been the biggest learning or the biggest finding that you found since sort of embarking on this, you know, climate tech journey? To put you all on the spot.
I could start, but my view is maybe very much tied to being or working as a scientist before.
I'm happy to jump in, but it's maybe a bit pessimistic. So I am full of enthusiasm when it comes to obviously the climate and making a difference and actually having values over value in some cases. One of my biggest learnings and biggest awakenings, rudely I suppose, was realizing that it's not as widely shared as I thought. And although it's on the end of everyone's noses, it's rammed down everyone's throat that we're in the situation that we are. It still frustrates me to realize that people are still on that journey to actually get to the same place I am, and that they're actually willing to make a difference and make changes in their everyday life. That was a big awakening for me.
Yeah, and what would you say were the big changes in inner life, Lee, that you would have to change? I know we see now, reusable water bottles, just as an example in everyday life. Is it those sort of things that you found?
Yeah, I think, look, there's a ton of things that you can do as an individual, right? It's not always the big global changes. I mean, as an individual, you won't necessarily be able to have as big an impact on a global change like that, but there are smaller little things you can do in terms of even as granular down to the individual products that you use in your home. You were talking there about reusable water bottles. It is things like that. It's possibly changing a diet and looking to make lifestyle changes. It's looking to swap out fossil fuel vehicles in place of more sustainable options. There is plenty of options that an individual can take, I suppose. But it's difficult. There's an education piece there. There's a piece around it, but the individual actually wanting to do it in the first place. I feel it's going in the right direction, not as quickly as I might hope.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's case by case, isn't it? Some people can, disrupt it more than they would, others would like. But Lisa, I feel like you've got something to say there. Feel free.
Yeah, the learning curve is super steep, so there are many learnings. What I actually just recognized today, because we had also an internal climate know-how session, is also that even though I would consider myself as a educated woman, also before the startup, to have a own expectation of understanding those challenges, right? I am step by step now working in the green tech industry together with very knowledgeable climate scientists such as Thomas, how little I actually know, right? And this is something that is also shocking and not nice to accept. And honestly, I feel that many people have that they know broadly something, they know, oh shit, and maybe also understand I don't know enough, and then do not prioritize for themselves to actually tackle this. And I see that a lot, and I experience that with myself. And if I have one wish to everyone that's listening or will soon listen, I think it's actually everyone's self-responsibility. We have a co-responsibility for everyone living on this planet. So figure it out what it means. There are formats like these or many others in order to understand what things you can do and just understand how it all functions. And to companies, I would and the politics going in the same way. If you're aware and and understand this is super important, then you actually also say, okay, we need a solution. If you're unaware and you put your priorities fully somewhere else, obviously you're not. So I think this is a general thing where the society needs to kind of waken up a bit, even though we talk about it for a long time.
Yeah, my perspective, I think what I learned most from it's the power of networking and how the communities, the traditional communities and the base knowledge that's there needs some time to be reached. And even though, okay, I might know this community, but it takes a while until we kind of start developing projects together with them and kind of trusting, and how important it is to organize an impactful network. An impactful network based on trust. That's kind of, for me, that's kind of the key for any solution that we need to build. And
sure. Yeah, and I think, Anna, as you said before, obviously you're working with lots of communities. So the networking side for you is super important, obviously, is educating and bringing people together, isn't it? With, how the business works.
Yeah, pretty much. That's it's on our names, right? Like Meli Bees Network. We are inspired by the bees. So Meli is because of Meliponini, the native stingless bees, around all tropical and subtropical areas. So a lot of people don't know, but there are stingless bees and they are native all around the globe. There are more than 400 species of them. And we are inspired by them as the primary pollinators that at the same time that produce food for themselves, also pollinate the surrounding. And they are also super diverse to kind of respect it's kind of what inspires us. And of course we build a network, so Meli Bees Network, for this reason. And so we focus on building an impactful network to bring climate justice to the climate change and climate crisis perspective.
For sure. No, yeah, no, thank you all for your input there. I know I put you on the spot for a moment and might have taken you a second to have a think, but yeah, appreciate your answers. And a question I'd like to throw out as well again is a term that is quite new to me is a term called greenwashing. And we've seen that it's a global issue with some brands sort of giving misleading information, giving misleading sort of info really about how environmentally sound a product, service, or an investment is. And so, Thomas, I'd like to ask you, how can stakeholders acknowledge the warning signs, and do we need sort of stricter regulations to address this issue?
That's a very tough and difficult question to answer, actually. So I completely agree to the last part. So yes, for sure, it is on the regulative side, because it goes also a little bit into the direction Lisa pointed out. So to what degree also can we empower people to judge and have the knowledge actually to look behind the mirror and see what is greenwashing or what is not greenwashing. I think what can be done better is in the terms of the regulations, that they need to report much clearer and that it is more transparent. I think that's always a topic from politics. I mean, in some places they do a good job, and I can fully understand that it takes time, but also it's frustrating at the same time that it's somehow intransparent, and that this is actually the floor, opening up the floor for greenwashing. Maybe I can also say a few words on not on a more on a customer side. So how can a customer identify when there are several products on the market, and how can I, as a customer, can judge if something is more credible than something else. So if you have a good marketing strategy, I think it is very easy also on the customer side to greenwash your own product. And here also, I think transparency is key. So maybe there needs to be also some kind of a mind shift, how companies should communicate, and also ideally team up with a network, with a sophisticated network in sciences, for example, so that you base your product and what you are developing in your product, that it is somehow transparent in the way that you at least communicate how you use it. Maybe not the full details, but that you show what you are doing, and that someone can also judge on it, even though he's a non-expert. So long story short, transparency is key.
100%. I think in a lot of situations, transparency is the big thing here, especially when it comes to the climate as well, because it's something that I think a lot of people do need further education on, and so to be transparent and to show them the facts is very important to educate people as well. And Anna, I see you raised your hand. Please feel free to jump in.
I do find the idea of greenwashing very complex, also simply because very often we don't listen to where these complexities reach in. So we cannot it's very hard for us to acknowledge the impacts in some regions that we don't have access to. So if it's happening in an area that I still don't have contact with, how could I really get the real news from that region? And I mean, of course, I work directly on areas that are very isolated, maybe. And that's kind of the perspective that I have right now, is that that's getting less and less problematic as soon as we kind of respect this network and we build even more. We give the voices for around the globe. Not that we think very often, oh, we are so far away from the Amazon area. for instance, of course, because that's the region I'm active on. But as I used to live in Ruhrgebiet, like in the German industrial area, I used to see the mining, the iron ores that pass through the indigenous area that I know very well. And it's kind of, okay, you think that mining in the Amazon is very distant from you, even though actually the illegal mining that gets gold, it actually sells legally was found by some investigations in Brazil to European companies, in the same way that they have their, like, how can we really follow up of what's happening, or what's our impact in some regions if we still don't have a good understanding about what's going on there. So that's kind of, I think that starts with giving voices to understanding the complexity of the world and understanding how complex we are connected.
100%. And yeah, thank you again for the answers on that. I think it's, yeah, a topic where there's, I'm sure we could all go on and speak about it for a good half an hour more than we have allocated. But I'd like to just jump into another question, and I'm happy to open this up to everybody, so feel free to jump in. But yeah, quite a general question, you know, which areas do you think at the moment are the hottest in sort of climate technology?
Well, obviously I'm biased, but obviously I really believe in it, right? I'm not just saying it to advertise RePath, but to have smart solutions, understanding what's going to happen. Let's phrase it like that, because it cannot be that the climate change physical risk understanding stays with the scientists. We need to make this information available, easily understandable for every individual on Earth in order to, understand it and be able to adapt. And obviously, this is what RePath does with the focus on businesses currently, but I really think that's the hottest area. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just to add on that. I think in terms of areas, I think, yeah, it definitely starts with education. You hit a really good point there, Lisa, that it's all well and good having this information, but if people don't understand it, you know, it's got to be relevant to everyone if you're going to make that change on the scale that needs to happen. So anything that's educating. Another area is anything that is enabling or reframing an existing process, but in a more sustainable way. I think those genuine solutions that are out there, they're the ones that I think have got to be higher. So education, and then enabling people to make that change as well.
Exactly.
Fantastic. Yeah, I don't know if Anna or Thomas, if you have anything to put in there.
Yeah, maybe I have an anecdote. So I remember that a former colleague of mine was used to say a little bit programmatic and also politically framed to put pressure on politics, but there was always the understanding of the information from a scientific point of view is there. What is needed is the action. But the question is, why do we fail to act or to transfer this information and the knowledge from the scientific community if it's there? And there is a lot of information is there, but why do we fail to get it on a broader scale, also on a societal level? And I totally agree to Lee, so that we need to empower people, society, economy, and also get more confident and fighting for it, and empower people also in companies to raise their voice, to put pressure on this topic within companies. So I think, and this is all goes hand in hand. I think there's not this one topic, but I think this is very important.
Yeah, agreed. And I think, as all of you mentioned in your points, is the education piece is massive. if people don't have a good understanding of where climate tech is and what it consists of and the best ways to be sort of combating things, it's often tough to sort of move forward with it. So again, yeah, some fantastic points. Thank you again. And yeah, the next part then is sort of maybe sort of looking on the other side of things is which areas do you think are possibly most overlooked within climate technology, the areas that people don't focus on as much? Happy to open it to anybody.
I think Lisa might have answered that earlier when struggling to get investment for things in the future, and anything that is not current now, the buzzword, or even what Anna was saying, things that people can see, tangible outcomes. If you're asking someone to invest in something, invest their time, invest their money in something that they can't physically see, unfortunately, I think those areas almost always get overlooked.
You brought an important point about like how I think it's very important to make it easier for the investment to kind of quantify with clarity on the start what's very often very hard to do on the side of climate change. I was surprised on the start of the poll of the questions that I think if I'm not wrong, no one mentioned the food impact, and I was kind of surprised because maybe I'm also a little bit biased of the food industry as a very high importance for the food production, but yeah, I think we will need to really look with a very holistic view. There are different perspectives.
Yeah, and I think that's what's so brilliant about today's panel as well, is you all come from similar companies, but all very different companies as well. So it's been great to understand the perspectives of all three businesses as well. So yeah, again, very, very happy that we've done this again. So next question I just wanted to run into, and I feel as though we've answered a similar question, but ultimately I appreciate that we're talking about adaptation and things about protecting the climate now and in the future, but where do you feel as though your end game is with your climate tech solution for all three of you? What's the sort of end goal to get to for the business, would you say?
Should I jump in first?
Feel free, Lisa, feel free.
I guess it does combine quite a lot, especially also what Lee said, but we are a company with a very strong purpose, and our purpose is driving us forward. So ultimately, our end game is to reach the purpose, which will probably not even been possible. Yeah, but our purpose is we at RePath enable humanity to reach a sustainable, climate adapted future for our planet. And I think that actually combines a lot of understanding, enabling humanity as a whole for a planet, sustainable, climate adapted. So obviously sustainability, climate protection, super important, but it needs to be climate adapted as well. So this is our end game. I have no idea. End game, I think of Mario, by the way, of levels, and there's always the end villain, I don't know. So if I think about that, I feel like, wow, there's so many levels to go, and so many times we fall just back and need to do the same again and same again. On the other hand, like, we really need to speed up. So yeah, our end game is definitely there, and we are fully focused on it, and we need to all tackle the same end game in the end, I guess. I hope.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. And Anna or Lee, feel free to jump in.
Yeah, I think so. I don't know if I'm a good person to reply, because in the end, I'm a nonprofit, right? So I'm not as tech oriented, but my perspective is to grow this network and to grow not only the Amazon, not only in regions in Brazil, but also kind of engage a network that is a large network that give voices to people in isolated areas or less connected areas, or marginalized areas in a bigger perspective. So that's kind of our end goal and understanding about them. So since starting to listen to their stories, but also, bring in all the support for their livelihood and financial thriving in the same time that the environmental thrives with them. That's kind of our goal, is always to connect thrive and the thriving in a kind of holistical sense. And show that that's not only possible, but that's actually the only way that's possible.
Cool. So firstly, I hope there is no end game. I hope our business goes on and on and on. But no, more seriously, so for us, because we're payments, we want to work with more and more businesses in the circular economy. And as we move into a decentralized future, we take the power away from the central powers, the big tech companies. We want to make sure that more companies have the ability, and we empower them to be able to grow as businesses and offer, especially in the circular economy, thinking about reuse, renewal. There's going to be more and more initiatives come in for recycling. Everything is going to be renewed and recycled at one point in the future, and we hope that we're there to enable the businesses to grow, not only in the UK but globally.
Fantastic. Again, I hope it doesn't finish as well, Lee, for you. I hope all of the businesses continue to flourish for many years to come. And I'm just going to close off with another question. I see we've got just over 5 minutes left. And I'll let everybody have a quick toilet break and so on before we jump into the networking at 7 o'clock. So we'll finish in a moment. But I think we've covered it a little bit, but and I know you said about getting the early investors involved, and there's a few other points to it as well. But the last thing I just ask again is what advice can any of you share to founders like yourselves in climate tech? If somebody today said, I want to start a new climate tech company, how do I go about it? What's the best way to go around it? And where does my passions have to lie? If you were telling somebody from today, they're about to start a business, what would you be telling them? What advice would you share?
I'll jump in first. So I think firstly, don't give up. I was like, just keep going. Obviously responsibly to your health, that is, but just keep going. If you have a passion and a vision, just keep pursuing it. And if people aren't getting what you're trying to get across, think of different ways to tell that story. And essentially just bring people around to your idea and your way of thinking, using as many statistics and all that good sort of stuff as possible. And eventually, if you're passionate and you've got a good enough vision, people will come around to your ideas.
Yeah, I would totally agree. What I would add is focus. Prioritization is the key. It can be very overwhelming, and also a lot of new ideas, opportunities. You talk to investors, everyone has a different opinion. Someone says, oh, amazing. The other says, no, you should focus on that. You should focus on that. Why does your pitch look like this? The others say, oh, it's amazing. So it is chaotic, and I think it's very important as a founder. And this is what we're learning. I also didn't know that this is going to happen before, to, of course, grab the know-how, but somehow stay true to yourself, to your idea, and focused. And also with investors, we're an impact company, so we don't want to go with everyone. We don't want to do things that have been maybe in the industry and classically done for years. But if you want to disrupt and do something else, it's hard, so even if it's frustrating, just stay with it. And there are companies, people, networks, supporters out there that you will find that are suitable to what you believe in. Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. I think you guys already brought very important points. And it's exhausting. And funding, starting any organization in your thing, it's exhausting. I find it very motivating to have a strong team around you, to surround you about people, because sometimes you're going to get down, because you're going to get sad. And I have to say, for me, it was always very moving to see how many other people I could move when I was low in energy. I could see the people that I supported before that were supporting me in other moments. So I do think this network is very important in this perspective. And I like to have the idea of you don't need to show exactly the map where exactly how you're gonna go, like, oh, I'm gonna this. You take the direction and you have a clear direction of what's your goal, and the path you're gonna take to reach that, you're gonna find out sometimes on the path, because sometimes the first plan doesn't work, but you kind of didn't change the direction. You kind of stay true to yourself, what Lisa just said, and have the clear direction of where you're going.
For sure, and be original, as you've all been saying, follow your dream, follow that idea, stick with it, surround yourself with a good team, and yeah, focus on one thing at a time. I think, obviously, I can't compare myself to any of you at all, but I find often when stress comes into it, focusing on one task at the time, and having that sort of vision on one thing, vision on another, and it helps to sort of break things down in a steady process. But again, I'm not a business owner like any of you, but anyway, so
maybe to add on it, also, I mean, some things sound maybe not so motivating, but it's also fun. So you have freedom. You should never continue if you lose the fun with that endeavor. So you learn so much in a very short amount of time, and it's just quite very interesting. So yeah, I can fully recommend to do.
Fantastic. Again, yeah, thank you very much, folks. Yeah, appreciate all of your insight this evening. It's been it's been great to sort of speak further about these points and for me to understand more as well. And so you'll see on the screen now, we have our last poll of the evening. I'll read that out for you now. It's, what are you willing to change to help reduce your carbon footprint? Something we discussed earlier about, reusable water bottles, and what else can you do in your day-to-day? So we've got reduced plane travel, buy an electric vehicle, use renewable energy, or a vegan diet. So if everybody would like to vote there, I think we've got about 30 seconds left. But again, just wanted to thank all of you for coming in along and sharing your mornings, evenings, or lunchtimes with us. And again, thank you to our speakers for sharing your insights and passions, and yeah, certainly to our audience as well for coming along and joining us. Thank you very much. We'd love to hear any of your feedback as well. So if you'd like to just go through very quickly and answer our very last poll, we'd very much appreciate it. And yeah, again, for those that wish to continue the discussion with myself and a few of the panel, I believe are going to jump onto our networking session now as well. The link is in the chat box. It was sent in a little bit earlier. So click on that link and you can come and join us for half an hour. And I'm sure some of you might want to pick some of their brains. So feel free to come and join us now. Thank you.